It's my pleasure now to be talking to Geoff Doidge and he's the man on screen there. G'day, Geoff.
G'day, Kevin. How you going?
Yeah, Geoff from the Reno Kings, of course. You guys have been whipping up a bit of a storm. You had a big conference down the Gold Coast recently, Geoff.
Yeah, it's amazing. We ran one for 3 days, and we had 250 people turn up. It's just it just shows that there is interest in property still, but people are just a little lacking in confidence, I think, and of course finance. One thing we found out is finance is still tricky.
Yeah, and do you see that changing in the near future, Geoff?
Well, what I'm told is that there's been a change to the Consumer Credit Code, and now everyone has to be tested as can they pay it back, and serviceability is always the issue now. What we did find is that if you got the right banker, they could work through that and get you across the line. Even I had difficulty because I'm not planning to pay back the property, the property loans. I'm controlling the debt, and all mine are interest only. Now, once they do the test of payback on me, that was a hard one for them, but they worked out how to do it. A good banker can do it.
Yeah. Geoff, I wanted to ask you a few things that people might not expect of us, but what does the average day hold for you?
Well, I'd probably like to, looking back, I like to do it in 3 stages. When I was at work, when I left work, and now. And I think that's probably good for people to see the stages where. They're the stages you go through, most people go through. So when I was I worked for 28 years as a public servant, and eventually got made redundant. But, when I went through mid-career crisis, midlife crisis, I was trudging off to work, and I really had to find another way. And I set some goals and left work with property worth $1.25 million. After leaving work, of course, then it's up to you. You can't point the finger at anyone else because there's 3 fingers pointing back at you.
Yes.
So I worked pretty hard I wanted to establish write books and give workshops on property, and that's what I started to do. And also to celebrate leaving work, I would have a 3-hour breakfast every Friday. Had that one today. Normally followed by an hour's massage to get my stress level really down, and then I used to go out and look for property. And after I left work, I had my superannuation money, my redundancy payout, and I went out and bought property. My first property made me my whole year's salary, and I was being paid about $40,000 at the time when I left work in '93, and I made $60,000 on that property just by buying well.
Yeah. So
the third stage is now. I left work with 1.25 mil. It's now around about the 27 mil. And I've got a saying, if you're going to be wealthy, you've got to keep healthy. So yes. I play 120 games of tennis a week over 4 sessions. And
how many games?
2 sessions of volleyball. And our team, believe it or not, I'm 67, and our team won the Brisbane volleyball competition, Division 2 social volleyball comp. And I've got a DA. I'm really passionate about property. I've got a DA for 10 one-bedders at Nunda, because one-bedders are a real little secret. They're money maker. And I'm doing a split of 2 houses at Hendra. So pretty busy and pretty healthy.
Did you say you play 120 games of tennis a week?
Yep. That's not, a game. It's actual, kind of 40 love, and that's one game.
Yes. Not matches. Yeah.
Around about 2 hours tennis, 8 hours tennis a week.
Yeah. What's one of what was one of the first major lessons you ever learnt? Tell us about that.
Well, I think you know this one. It was those dreaded bikies, that first house I bought.
Oh, yes.
And and I suppose out of that comes your research. I finished up with the bikies in there. I also found out that when I went around to get the rent, you don't drink with your tenants, otherwise you forget to get the rent. Remember they didn't, bikies, they don't mow lawns, they ride Harleys, and they had a sheep to keep the grass down. And one day they were having the backyard barbecue and they ran out of meat and they finished up eating the lawnmower. Hey, I want to ask you a question, Kevin.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Where does a bikie change the oil on their Harley?
In the backyard? I don't know.
No, in the lounge room, mate.
In the lounge room? I was pretty close.
Yeah, if it's raining, it's done in the lounge room. That house had a big oil stain right in the lounge room there.
Incredible.
Yeah, I had to go past all that, and I bought that house for. I had to get 2 personal loans to buy it.
Yep.
I don't recommend everyone do that, but that's how I got started. Bought it for $7,000 in 1971, and I sold it 3 years later for $12,000. That's about when you think about it, a $70,000. 70,000. That's a 70% capital gain.
Yes.
You know that property. This is in the really sleazy rundown suburb called Hawthorne. Look at it now. It's worth 700,000 plus.
Yes.
So I learned a bit about holding property.
Yes. Yeah. So that's your policy now, to hold?
Buy and hold, or even a BTR now. I build to rent.
Oh yes. Okay. In the story that's featured in the latest edition of Australian Property Investor magazine, you say that you almost lost the shirt off your back in the share market. Tell us about how hard was that to recover from?
Well, I remember that. What I actually said was I lost my shirt and almost lost my shorts, and that's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
No, I used to. I was looking for my parents didn't have any money. That's one thing I wanted to do was when I retired. I didn't want to retire broke because they argued about money the whole time, or the lack of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, myself and a guy at work, I forget his name now. We used to get together 237 get-rich-quick schemes, and we were working our way through them. One of them was the stock market. In my case, I call it the shock market.
Yeah.
I was out there buying hundreds and thousands of these little shares.
Yeah.
I had discovered by looking at these shares that there was a couple of shares that were half a cent. Now, at that time, they could only go up to 1 cent or back to half a cent to 1 cent back. Now, that's 100% profit. So I was buying those and I was making a fortune. And I told the boss, hey, mate, I'm making more money than you. You don't say that to the boss.
No.
There's another tip. Not good for your career.
Yeah.
And what happened was, of course, the shares that I was buying for half a cent, they went up gradually up, and the market went up. And I was buying for 10 cents and selling for 20 cents. And then one day, fateful day, down with the market, I learned about crashes, and they went back to half a cent.
Oh goodness.
I was wiped out.
Yes. Really? Yeah. Oh, because you kept compounding that, did you? Kept buying.
Yeah, I kept on. I kept in the market. I didn't pull anything out.
Oh, okay.
And out of that. That was really hard to get back because of all that money I was making, I wasn't studying my engineering. I failed that, and then the third trifecta of the trifecta, I won the lottery. Except that they pulled my age out of the barrel, and I went off to the army. I was just conscripted.
Oh.
That's how they did in those days.
Yeah, that's right. The lottery. Yeah.
Yeah, and I came out of there and turned my life around. I started, I passed the exams.
Yeah.
I took a control after I went through all that midlife crisis and stuff. I got control of the way I thought about things, and then I got control of my finances. That's one of the big things. Take control of your finances and find the money just disappearing. I started serious investing, and one day I was made redundant. I left work with that 1.25 mil. So. That was the road. That's the whole road there. Yeah,
it's been a fantastic career that you've developed since that first career, Geoff. I mean, you must know South East Queensland inside and out. What's your favourite suburb? What's the area that you recommend people should look at?
Yeah, Kevin, I probably, when I left work, I didn't have all those strategies. There were no courses, believe it or not. There were no courses on property.
Yeah.
There was Jan Summers' book, a great book on property. I had that, but not much more. And I just looked around basically where I was. And I was born on the south side, but I moved to the north side. And I liked those inner northern suburbs. I was at Albion at the time, and it was only about 4K city, lots of transport. And next to that was high affluent suburbs like Clayfield, Ascot, Hamilton. I call those three the Golden Triangle. And I bought in those suburbs, and what I'd buy, I wouldn't buy, I could afford to buy on the top of the hill. I'd buy in the fringe, just over the road from the good areas. And as, that urban sprawl came out, gentrification crawled out, I found that you could buy $60,000 less on one side of the street than the other. Things like that. I found little changes in the rules by the council. In Hendra, for example, all the stables were going the other side of Nudgee Road. I'd buy there.
Yes.
I'd work those little tricks and traps that way.
Yes.
And of course, affluent suburb, great transport. All the tunnels have gone through. They're all in place. The airport is acting like a great generator for jobs.
Yes.
Private schools, and less than 10k city. Just about looked after itself.
Yeah, pretty compelling reasons there. Let me ask you another question about your strategy. You've invested a lot in this area, in the southeast Queensland area. Are you a bit concerned that you got all your eggs in the one basket?
I think Jan Somerset's just get a very good basket. And they say, I've looked at all the options. Southeast Queensland's been a fantastic generator of wealth for me. And now I'd be worried, just recently, look at if one of the women that was at our workshop on the weekend, she had all this property in Christchurch and virtually wiped out with that one earthquake. Luckily, we don't have that. But that is a compelling thought, that when you think a whole suburb can be wiped out. So I think I thought about that. We're very stable here, kind of in the geological area. I did have, for example, one property at one stage in Mount Tambourine, and I found slip zones there. As a civil engineer, I knew what that was like, and I sold out of that area. So I'm pretty comfortable where we are. Southeast Queensland's starting to pick up now. There's all the mining, and it's acting as a feeder for the mining and coal seam gas, and of course all the other tourism and sugar and all the other activities in Queensland. It's a great area to be. Yeah.
Everyone has a renovation nightmare story. Surely you, from the Reno Kings, you've got one. Would you share it with us, Geoff?
Well, and I'm telling you the truth, I don't have a horror story. I actually have a series of a lot of small mistakes which can add up to losing money and losing time. But and you know him, I had the privilege of when I was doing a seminar once, this guy in the front row popped up. He'd bought 6 properties in 11 months, and it was called Paul Eslek. He's a master reno. What he taught me was the system. Have a system when you do a reno and can save your time and money. He was getting in and getting out in 4 weeks and making his whole year's salary. And that's the guy that taught me, and that's what we've been teaching other people over all these years.
Paul, of course, the other part of the Reno Kings, and he's obviously probably saved you from a number of disasters, Geoff. If he hadn't come along, maybe there would be one.
Well, that's true. Just one little tip, I'll share that with you.
Yep.
I was doing this property and I was painting inside, and he came along and said, well, Jeffrey, what are you doing? I said, I'm painting inside. He said, it's a fine day, why aren't you painting outside? I said, Paul, I'll finish. When I finish painting inside, I will go outside and I'll paint. And I finished painting inside, went outside and rained for 2 weeks. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
When it's fine, you paint outside.
Yeah, make hay while the sun shines, the old story, isn't it? Have you got a goal? 2013, what's your goal for the number of properties you'd like to acquire this year, Geoff?
Well, I've actually was celebrating this year, and I've been celebrating with French champagne. Whenever I achieve something, when I buy a property, I get a loan or I get a DA or whatever, I have a bottle of French champagne. I'll tell you what, I'll have to start cutting back.
Drink
French champagne. Because I achieved my 3-year goal that I set three years ago. I always set them on New Year's Eve when I look back at the year past and look forward to the year ahead. And everything's positive at that time, so you can set some good goals. Yeah. And I set 3 years ago a goal for $1 million in rental income, and I achieved it this year. It's already gone up to 1.1, so things are moving. But I've reset it now, and I want to increase this year. I want to increase my equity by $1 million, and I've got a plan to do that. And I want to increase my rent by $100,000. Totally achievable. Totally in this market, as long as you can get the funds to do it, and that's the key. That
is the key, and that's where we started in this conversation too, talking about the banks. Geoff, I want to thank you very much for giving us your time. I know you've squeezed me in amongst a number of appointments, and I appreciate that. Thank you, and we look forward to reading and hearing a lot more about you.
You will.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin.